Well, welcome everyone to this special, well, actually it's a special meeting of the Carefree Town Council, a workshop to discuss the general plan. Please take a silent roll call.
And I have Councilmember Delicio telephonically.
Okay, and everyone else is present and accounted for. Susie Dymoke, please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. And as we begin, I would just remind everyone that when you come up and speak, to state your name and your address and speak directly into the microphone. Please limit your comments to no more than 3 minutes. And so as we tackle each of the open general plan items, we'll have an opportunity for public comment after each of them. And then at the conclusion, we'll have, if there's any remaining call to the public, we'll allow those folks to come up and speak. Okay. So we'll start with a review and discussion regarding the general plan draft. This is the second council work session led by Matt Kleisko, Michael Baker International, to continue discussion of the February 2024 public hearing draft of the general plan. Matt.
Great. Well, thank you, Mayor and Council. It's good to be back before you for this second installment of our general plan conversation. What I'll share with everyone and Council this evening is that the first few slides that I'm going to go over are going to look very similar, basically identical to the last meeting, and that's just for continuity purposes to make sure if we have any new participants or anyone that might listen to this after the fact that they have the benefit of at least an abbreviated explanation of the lead-in slides that help set the foundation to the topics that the mayor mentioned we would be getting into this evening. So to remind everyone, the purpose of this meeting, really I'll skip to that final one, and that final bullet point there is that we're working to prepare the public hearing document. And so everything up until this point has been shown in track form or track changes form to identify where edits are being considered and what text is being proposed. But ultimately, we need to get to a public hearing draft that we can all utilize as the primary reference point for taking something forward for Planning Commission recommendation and ultimately council decision, which then would be taken forward to the voters for ratification. So that's the whole purpose of these work sessions, is to get a lot of this work completed so that when we get to these public hearings, we're discussing more nuanced items instead of maybe more robust conversations. Now, for the benefit of those who didn't hear last week, this is a generalized flow chart of the overall process of the general plan. Again, I won't highlight all of the bullet points and phases of the project, but I'll just show that we've come a long way since we started this back in November of 2022. You can see the green arrow at the top there shows where we are in the timeline of this total effort. So we're getting close to the finish line as we work towards a June council date for the ultimate approval of the plan, which would then put it on the November 5th ballot for voter ratification. Now, to look at a little harder dates, if you will, we provided this slide. So it's a little, you can see more detailed than the general flow chart on the previous slide. So these are the specific dates. We're at our second council work session there on April 9th. After this meeting, the next planned meeting will be the Planning and Zoning Commission public hearing, which is required by state statute. At that meeting on May 13th, we seek a recommendation. That recommendation is then taken to council for a hopefully final approval of the plan on June 4th. At that time, we did hear from the county that very shortly after that June 4th, we need to provide the ballot language for the ratification process. So again, as you see that 100-day waiting period, which is a state mandated period, even the county is asking or needing information for the election prior to that July 8th date. So I only emphasize that because I want to remind everybody we don't have a lot of fluff in this schedule in terms of postponing things or talking through topics in additional context if we want to maintain that November 5th ratification date. Leading up to this conversation, and as required by state law when we update the general plan, we must have a 60-day review process. That is a 2-month process that is built into the general plan update effort where you put the pens down and you share the document, the plan that's in place at that time with adjacent communities as well as local and state agencies. In addition to that, we obviously extend the 60-day review draft to the public as well, even though that's not necessarily required by statute. We obviously see that as a perfect opportunity to get resident input in addition to public agencies. So this slide captures the results of that 60-day review that happened from October of last year to December. You can see we received over 350 responses. We validated those responses from residents, and then we also received 5 public agency responses or formal responses from public agencies, and you can see those agencies listed there. If you haven't and would like this 60-day review summary of all those comments, every comment plus a generalized summary of the information that was shared, is all available on the project website. And in that summary, we identified some primary themes that came out of the feedback of those 353 comments. And so those themes related to thoughts and concerns about growth and density, views on design and architecture, consideration for parks and open space, understanding of economic development, understanding of water and our water resources. And then we also recognize that if you were to look at those 353 comments, there is a tone and a sequence to a lot of the comments. So we do recognize that there were some form responses. That is common within general plan updates, but we share that just to make everybody understand. It's not repetitive comments. They are from the best of our ability to validate all unique responses. So, going through this a little quicker than last time, but what does all that mean? All that means is that this is a community-driven process when we're developing a general plan, and that there's more than just public input to developing a final draft. The public is certainly critical to the development of a general plan for a community. But there's always other items that must go into the evaluation process. There's technical considerations, whether it be laws or best practices. There are existing conditions when we're looking at data and census information. And then there's also historical context, feedback from elected and appointed officials that might have historical reference that would inform the decision-making process. So we're evaluating all of these and trying to balance these inputs when we're developing the general plan so that we can all make educated decisions that are in the best interest of the town. So our process of doing that and collecting all that information, we prepared this public hearing draft that is also available on the project website. You can go to the town website, and at the top of the website there's a band and a link that says general plan, and it'll take you right to the project webpage. On that page, we provided this track changes version of the general plan so that everybody can see line by line, word by word, what was originally proposed and how those edits were incorporated based off of comments out of the 60-day review process. And so that's not usually something we do at this stage, but we recognize, given the level of interest and focus on the general plan, that it would be beneficial for everyone to be able to see where the attention is being placed. So with that, I'll get into where we left off in our last conversation, which is getting to, while we had many comments from the public, there was really four topic areas that seemed to require further conversation. Those topic areas are listed on the slide there: community park and 48-acre state land site, the Carefree Water Company, the residential above retail, and the special planning area or SPA designation for the northwest corner of Tom Darlington and Carefree Highway. In our last work session last week, we discussed the community park and 48-acre state land site, and we received feedback from council, and we'll go over that feedback this evening. We also went over the Carefree Water Company comments and appreciated council's feedback and direction on that. So this evening, the two primary focus areas will be residential above retail, followed by the special planning area or SPA designation. Now, I will say, for transparency purposes, since our last meeting, there was a petition that was circulated in town that the staff did start to receive responses to that petition. Staff received over 91, I believe, responses to that petition. And so we do at least want to recognize, while that came later in the process, we do want to recognize that it was received by the town. The petition did speak to being in favor of preserving the commission and council responsibilities, prioritizing town expenditures, and avoiding investing limited resources in open space or parks. And 91 responses did speak in favor of that petition. So for the record, that is acknowledged that the town received that information, but that information will not be a part of the presentation because it was not a petition or survey that was prepared by the general plan team or the town directly. So moving into getting back to council regarding our community park and 48-acre state land conversation. When we met last week, there was great dialogue on this specific topic. One of the areas that council commented on, if you recall, is the open space and environmental stewardship actions. So what you see on the slide here are the three action items that specifically focus on open space and the development or consideration of, well, I should say, it focuses on the consideration of open space and the development of a stakeholder advisory committee. Council shared some concerns about committing the town to funding that the town is not in a position to necessarily be able to support. And so council asked to take another look at the language associated with these action items to see how we might help to better clarify that. So this is the language in its track changes format that was discussed last week. Now, as far as the edits go for our conversation today, you can see it's the same three action items, but action item B, if you will, is no changes. We accepted the edits that were incorporated. And so action item B focuses on the creation of an open space stakeholder advisory committee. There wasn't really much discussion, I think, on the creation of the committee. Action item C did have a reference to identifying a dedicated funding source in the town budget. And as we looked at that language and the direction from council, we felt that that really kind of whole sentence didn't align with council direction. And so our proposal for consideration is to remove that statement and just focus on, through a public process and with the assistance of the Open Space Stakeholder Advisory Committee, pursue all sources of funding, including but not limited to. We wanted to capture what council was saying, that you're open to assisting in all aspects, not just limited to certain ones. So we changed such as to including but not limited to donated funds, state and federal funding, grant opportunities, and corporate contributions. Now, to complement that, we did have this green text was actually incorporated as part of the action item down in action item D, that you can see there is struck through because it was moved, and we thought it fit better in association with the edits to action item C. So supporting that statement is utilize the Open Space Board to work in conjunction with like-minded agencies and nonprofits such as the Desert Foothills Land Trust, Carefree Park, and other interested groups or residents to define a strategy for funding, acquiring, and preserving open space in perpetuity. So we thought that C, with striking some of that language and adding it, we were trying to get closer to something that aligned with council direction. So that is the overall context of the edits made relative to open space, and I'll pause there, Mayor, to see if council has any follow-up questions or requests.
Thank you, Matt. So I think it's really important to take away or take out obligating the town through the general plan to fund the acquisition of property for open space. And so I look at what you've done here, and I like what you've done. And I will open it up to council to comment further.
I think that reflects our comments from last week.
Okay. So hearing no other comments, I will open up to public comment. So I have a couple of slips here who have specifically stated they would like to speak about the open space element in this section. So first up is Ms. Wendy Mattis.
Wendy Mattis, Carefree resident. Mayor and council, thank you for the opportunity to speak on this topic tonight. It was clear to me after last week's meeting that some on the council are operating under misinformation about Carefree Park. Carefree Park has never asked the town of Carefree for funds for acquisition. We have never asked the town for funds for improvements, nor have we asked for funds for ongoing park maintenance. Residents have expressed that they want to see a stronger commitment from the town to create a park on the 48 acres. And there are other ways the town can show its commitment and support of this effort. Number one, we've identified grants in the amount of $1.5 million, which can be used for land acquisition, but must be applied for by a government entity. We have confirmed with the Arizona Auditor General these grants do not count against town expenditure limits, and this is an extremely easy way for the town to support this effort without spending a dime. We have ballpark cost estimates for construction of improvements and for ongoing annual maintenance. These estimates were provided to us by Maricopa County Parks and Rec and by Desert Foothills Land Trust. Again, these are estimates, but maintenance will not be anything near $200,000, which was stated by council at the last meeting. We have identified annual grants for improvements and for ongoing maintenance, And as a nonprofit, we can apply for these grants ourselves, and we're fully committed to doing this. Most importantly, you can show your support by your words and by your actions. Some of you have expressed skepticism and shown a lack of support to the community based wholly on false information. I will point out that the 48 acres is currently zoned R70 residential. It's not zoned commercial or retail. Therefore, creating a park will not impact town income. If this land is developed, the town will see one-time construction revenue, after which it will become a liability rather than a source of income, with new homes needing town services. We are not expecting you to fund this, but we are expecting you to hear our voices and to support us in the ways you can. If there's anything you don't know about Carefree Park, we invite you to simply ask the people who are actually doing the work on it, and not the people who would intentionally mislead you. Mayor, council members, please hear that the residents want to conserve our beautiful Sonoran Desert. We have an opportunity to conserve 48 acres, which we believe will be a tremendous asset for the town, for residents, and for visitors in perpetuity. Thank you.
So, can I ask a question? Can I ask a question? Yeah. So just to be clear, so you're not asking the town to fund acquisition, to fund improvements, or to fund sustaining the park, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, Ms. Ariane Buser.
Hi, Ariane Buser, Carefree resident. And thank you, Wendy, for spelling out all of those facts. I think some clarification was desperately needed because last week's meeting, there was a lot of incorrect information flying around. So I just want to reiterate what Wendy has said. We have never asked the town to help fund the park. The money that we have raised, which by the way is over $1.1 million, has been solely done by donations and pledges by residents who believe in what we are trying to do, and that is to preserve the Sonoran Desert so that it does not become yet another tract home development, which is what we do not want, which will actually drain the resources more. If you're so worried about funds and things like that, adding a development of houses over there will absolutely drain the resources. And actually, I have another question. So that petition that was sent around, that's very interesting. Was that sent to all the residents or to only a small group of residents? Because I check my email every day. I did not get any such petition. So I wonder if this petition was only sent to a group of people that was maybe not so not such a fan of what we're trying to do in terms of preserving this piece of land, this beautiful piece of land. So therefore, I appreciate, Matt, that you are not going to recognize those comments because honestly, if it's a petition, it should have gone out to the entire Carefree resident population, and not just to a very, very small group of folks that might be looking to derail what we are trying to do in this town. And also, by the way, I also heard that, back in the day, Carefree actually used to have an open space fund. Now, isn't that interesting? So back in the day, they actually used to have an open space fund where they would try and put a little bit of money aside to preserve open space. So you wonder why something like that couldn't have been introduced as part of the budget. And it doesn't have to, if you want to show your appreciation and support of this, why not give at least, if you wanted to contribute, which once again, we're not asking you to do so because we're working on this ourselves, but if you wanted to, what a great way to show some support for what we're trying to do. And once again, preserving this land, this piece of beautiful Sonoran Desert, goes to the legacy of Carefree. Do you want to have your names associated with yet another housing development? Or do you want to have your names and your time on council being associated with preserving a beautiful piece of Sonoran Desert that residents and visitors alike can come and enjoy for years to come? Please think on that. Thank you.
Just a couple of comments. One, that petition, it was sent out by a resident, so I have no idea distribution or anything else about it, so sorry. Secondly, on this development fund, and Mr. Neese can help me out with this, there was a time, probably about 10, 12 years ago, when we had development fees. We collected development fees from new construction, and by law, we were permitted to put that money aside in like an open space fund, apparently. state legislature changed the laws and the regulations for that, and it became too difficult for us to have development fees any longer, so we stopped doing that. We had collected around, say, $275,000, and we had to spend it within, there was a deadline, and we purchased land in the northeastern corner of our town, which was now some open space that we've designated. So that's the story behind that fund. So the revenue stream to it stopped 10 years ago. Okay, next up, Ms. Diane Roth.
Hi, oops, sorry, sunglasses. Diane Roth, resident of the Boulders, and can I say candidate for town council? But anyway, so to paraphrase Charles Dickens, A Tale of Three Parks. It was the best of parks and it was the worst of parks. One park in Scottsdale by Target is a concrete jungle that has been bladed and paved to create 3 pickleball courts, a basketball court, 70 parking spaces, and is more like an urban playground than a park. It will cost a massive amount of money to build and maintain. The next park, the Desert Foothills Trust, is more like a museum where carefully chosen people are allowed to go up and look at the artifacts, but only 16 at a time, and only the time chosen by those who manage the park. While the third park, not yet acquired, is 48 acres of land inhabited by many old saguaro, an assortment of flora and fauna and wildlife, easily walking trails within half-mile of our downtown, and accessible to all. So which of these 3 sound like something that is in keeping with the carefree spirit of Carefree and is deserving of our full support, both citizens and town council, and does not ask for money, just your support? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I have no other comments, requests to speak on this topic. So I haven't missed anyone, have I? Okay, so I'll close public comment on this. Okay, so Matt, I think we're pleased with what you have done, and I think we can move on to the next topic.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Well, that will lead us into the first new topic for our conversation this evening, and that is residential above retail. And for those who hadn't joined us in prior meetings, hopefully you'll see there's kind of a rhythm to each of these topic areas. We'll present issues and concerns that were pulled from that 60-day review period. And then we'll talk about some of the discussions that we had with the Planning and Zoning Commission where residents shared additional input. And then we'll have dialogue with council and then open it up to public comment. So what we see on the slide here is concerns relative to the topic of residential above retail. And this from kind of summarizing the general sense from residents through that 60-day review is that this policy will only help to further the negative impacts on views in the town center.
Oops, sorry.
And, oh, my time's up. I guess I gotta go. Or we can, we also heard the Hampton Inn and the View townhomes have blemished and detracted the magnificent views Carefree residents once enjoyed. And so when we see those comments, those are all fair comments and concerns, but when we, from a consultant standpoint, start to dissect them, it causes us to ask questions that we start to think, well, maybe we need to further clarify what is being provided and what is allowed in order for residents to fully understand the entire scenario. And from that vantage point, then we can make more educated decisions. So what you see here is a snapshot on the slide at the bottom there from the general plan that identifies some of the land use types that are depicted in the general plan. And so the one of topic here is the town center description there, which says this category allows mixed uses, including residential above commercial. And so that is where residents are having concern. And then there's another section following this description where we are talking about in the growth element, this same language comes up, and I'll touch on that in a couple slides. So from that, these are the additional considerations that we shared with residents at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting based off of the input we were receiving. Maybe there was some things we needed to clarify to better inform everyone. And the first one that we wanted to share in regards to residential above retail is that this provision is not new. This is not something we added to this general plan. It's part of the existing general plan. It was part of the vision for the town upon its founding. And some of the residential that is above retail in the town center today was developed originally just in that fashion. And so this is something that the town has had the ability to utilize in the town center. It hasn't necessarily been prolific, but it does exist in the town center. So we wanted to make sure residents understood this is not something that's being introduced, that it's been in the general plan for over a decade now, and then some. The other consideration that we have to be mindful of is Prop 207. And Prop 207 was passed in 2006. It's ARS 121134, if anyone wants to look it up directly. And this is about diminish value and just compensation. So Prop 207 requires local governments to compensate private property owners if the value of a person's property is reduced by the enactment of a land use law. So that obviously is something that was very impactful when this law was passed. And you can imagine that communities were very attentive to the fact that if any law reduces the property value of someone's land, that the town or city would be on the hook for that reduction in property value. So Prop 207 is the reason why changing land use and zoning to permit less intensive development in Arizona is difficult. Property owners must either waive their entitlements voluntarily or be compensated for the reduction in value of their property. So there was concern that because this language is in the general plan and also is part of the zoning and entitlement, right? The next layer after the general plan is the zoning document, which actually identifies what we call entitlements. It grants a property owner, where a general plan is policy and guidance, zoning is entitlements, and it allows the property owner the use of property. And so we wanted to be, as a consultant, very conservative in how we react to Prop 207. And so with those items in mind, we also shared with residents, okay, how, even though we have concerns about Prop 207 and the fact that this has been on the books for a while now, we still tried to listen to residents and understand what were the concerns they had and can we address those in other ways. And so when we look at the goals that are outlined in the general plan, we have goal SC3 that focuses on protecting scenic views. So residents mentioned this residential above retail, there's concern for views. And so the general plan did add a new goal relative to views, and you can see the policies associated with that. But we also heard from residents concern about oversight. And so within the action items, which we just talked about open space, there's also action items relative to scenic and community character. And so action items A and B within that section also has further guidance relative to utilizing an advisory group to help develop stronger guidelines relative to development, especially not only in the town center, I should say, but town-wide. So those were a couple areas where we were trying to listen to residents, and if we couldn't get all the way there in terms of removing specific language, there's some other areas that we knew we could do better at, and so we tried to incorporate that into the general plan. So with all that foundation in place, we're all working off the same language. Here is how the dialogue paraphrased went with the Planning Commission. That residents that opposed this language stated they understood the general plan text change would not change existing entitlements. So we first wanted to make sure that if everyone's sharing their input, that we understand if we change something in the general plan, it doesn't automatically change zoning. So the fact that zoning allows residential above retail would remain in place if we were to change the general plan. Residents that opposed the language stated they understand the Hampton Inn and the View townhomes were not granted any benefits under this provision, that the Hampton Inn and the townhomes did not utilize this tool in that development aspect. And so if the townhomes and the Hampton Inn were the issue, I don't know that this particular language would move the needle in terms of addressing the Hampton Inn and View townhomes. Residents that oppose language shared that they are most concerned about views and overall intensity of development in the town center, even if existing zoning allows multi-story development by right. So the other thing we wanted to make sure residents understood is that this isn't necessarily granting additional height. Development can already be developed, and we see development in the town center that is 2 stories. And so it wanted to make sure residents understood if we took this out, it doesn't preclude someone that they could develop 2 stories and not necessarily have residential above retail. Residents also questioned who would occupy such residential units and if they would be restricted for short-term rentals. And so obviously if it is residential, or maybe it isn't obvious, but if residential were to be developed there, we couldn't restrict who could occupy those units. And based on state law, there would be some challenges with how you could limit short-term rentals in those residential units as well. So the last point would be commission requested an interpretation on if removing this language from the general plan, would it present a Prop 207 claim? And council looked into it, and certainly council can correct me if I'm wrong, but the feedback is that because entitlement or the zoning still grants these property owners the ability to do residential above retail, removing it from the general plan would not, in essence, drastically expose the town to a claim because the entitlements are still in place. If we were, not that we can through the general plan process, but if there was an impact to entitlements, that's more so where Prop 207 would definitely kick in this instance. And so for that, I will share, based on that, all of that input, hearing from residents, clarifying some items with residents to make sure they understand all of the nuances that we're trying to keep in mind, then having good dialogue with residents at the Planning Commission. Our suggestion is that in the 2 locations that this topic is addressed, that we actually can strike this language. So on page 24, where we describe the town center land use, we would strike that language and the result would read, this category allows mixed uses, offices, and public, semi-public uses within the area bounded by Bloody Basin, Cave Creek Road, and Tom Darlington Drive. And then the supporting language on page 27 within the growth element, you can see there at the end of that paragraph, that speaks to the town center. There's language that says residence above retail space, and it originally said would allow for additional population to support the viability of businesses, and so on. That was the original language. Then after the 60-day review, we added the red underlined language to try to respond to residents' concern for that. But that still didn't necessarily appease specific residents, so we think, based on the totality of, solar language is in my mind, I guess. Based off of that language, we're comfortable with removing that from the general plan, but again, understanding it does exist in entitlements and zoning. So with that, Mayor, I'll turn it back over to council for any questions or comments, or council, if they have any points of clarification relative to Prop 207.
Do you have any clarifications?
No, I
Council?
think Matt
Okay.
said it.
You did a good job. I mean, I like the changes that you made. We haven't diminished anybody's property, but we've listened to what the residents have to say, and you've removed it out of the general plan. Open it up to comments from council. So, okay, thank you. Yeah, go right ahead.
Just curious, with respect to, Gary has more history than yourself with the town. Why is there only just a few built? Were they built that way initially? Were they added to the buildings thereafter, or anybody know how that was done?
Oh, I do not know.
Anybody?
No.
Because there's 3 or 4, right? State, do you know? Give us some insight.
Sure, Mayor, council member. Yeah, just to kind of get some clarification, so, yeah, it was part of the original plan to kind of have this idea of this residential above retail, and some of the first buildings were built that way. I think part of the challenge is as things evolved, we started looking at requirements for on-site parking, or how parking was dealt with for some of these particular buildings. And then as it evolved into a kind of more of a public parking, when you look at the buildings on Easy Street, many of them don't have on-site parking, and we have a 2-car requirement for on-site parking per unit. So that in itself makes it very difficult for, say, like the Warren Building, or if venues wanted to have something above, to be able to provide residential above retail. And so so that's made it somewhat difficult, but there are areas where it's been successful, and we've done a few of those. One of them was in the office complex over by Bash's, and I can't remember the name of the office complex, but they put some residential up above, but they have their own parking field, and so they were able to park that. So it has occurred. Some of it's been administrative to some extent. I think Stacy would have to answer that question, exactly how that process works, but there's not a ton of opportunity anyhow for it to occur. The other one would be like the tea room building. They have offices upstairs. I think they did look to program that as a residence at one point, but it just never
I
materialized.
think 1 or 2 of them are used as an office
Yes.
upstairs,
Yep.
as I recall.
So,
But that's it, so this, just by the fact that the parking really inhibits the use of those properties as a place to live, and
yep.
natural barriers already built in, if you will, to.
Yeah, so it's somewhat difficult. I think, my analysis of kind of hearing some of the commentary, I think the biggest issue that people have is just looking at the total density above, especially as you look at the center of town, when we look at the post office building. One of the questions I get a lot is, I hear there's apartments going above that, and there's no project on the books for doing anything like that. But I think my general concern I hear from residents is mirroring the density of the hotel for that particular site. And so I think that's where I think some of this comes from, and people can, I don't know if they agree with that, but that's just been my assessment from what I've heard.
Doesn't appear to me that we have much of a threat going forward.
Yes, it's a good comment about the parking as being a controlling factor, inhibitor.
Exactly. All right, thank you.
Thank you. So I have no public comment slips. Okay, if you have a public comment slip to this, you're welcome to come up and speak. Okay, well, if you wish to speak about this particular item, you're welcome to come and speak now.
Well, in case you forgot, Diane Roth, resident of Carefree. So I'm sure some of you, like me, were not thrilled by the look of the Hampton Inn and the View townhouses. So keeping that in mind, It cannot be a surprise that the residents are trying to put language into the general plan to make sure we don't get more of this. We are a small community whose founders came here to escape what they saw happening in Scottsdale. They wanted to create the antithesis of Scottsdale. No two-story buildings, no residential over retail, no big signs, and I'm sure they never dreamed that we'd have a Route 95 Newark, New Jersey, Hampton Inn, sorry. Our town center was meant to represent what a small desert town in harmony with the desert should look like. A town that is unique, that it honors the past while moving forward into the future. We are a charming, small community, and we want to keep it that way. People are drawn here for the beautiful beauty of the Sonora Desert and the lifestyle. If they wanted different, they would be at Kierland or Old Town. These are not the models of our town. Carefree should always remain carefree in more ways than one. And also, if it was part of the original vision, why are 90% of the buildings one story? I mean, when you read everything the town fathers, and I've read a lot of their biographies, they never envisioned that. Where'd that come from? I mean, and Steve said it's somewhere. Town was founded 40 years ago. They started building 65 years ago. So if the vision was for retail, residential over retail, wouldn't some of the original buildings, more than one, have it? So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Vivas? So please fill one out at the conclusion.
Okay.
Thanks.
I'm just curious, all sarcasm aside, is the idea of raising the skyline, in essence, redesigning Carefree into Carefree Heights? The town has a way of connecting the dots, I think, between the View Housing, Hampton next door, which gives us some shade anyway, and the northeast corner where we're thinking of putting a hotel in. I think from probably the Spirit of the Desert, we could see the dots all the way to the hotel eventually if it's developed. Just wondering about political motivations aside from the hope-for revenue. If the Hampton fails, the Hilton organization merely sells it off in a few years. We don't know how much it's bringing in because it's proprietary information. The same could happen in the northwest corner if the hotel fails. So why would Carefree take the risk of gambling the beauty of the Sonoran at the entrance to the town? And Matt, I have a question for you. I understand the issue about entitlement and zoning regarding the residential over retail. What I'm wondering is, and Prop 207, et cetera, but how would that affect the northeast corner if in fact it's still zoned VLDR?
Okay. I think this belongs in a different segment.
I think that section comes next.
I'm putting the two
but-
together.
I think you can get that question answered.
Okay.
When we get to that next section, Matt, just make a note and we'll address that question. Okay. Okay.
Just so, can we just clarify that the option to monetize a second story is in our zoning laws right now, and I believe have been in our zoning laws since we incorporated. So that's the fact. It's been there. There have been original buildings that were built with 2 stories, but that zoning law has been in place since the town was incorporated. That's the reality, that's the fact.
Okay. So we're not,
Okay,
okay, we're not,
just trying to reiterate, since that seems to be a confusion, area of confusion.
is this for this topic? Okay, Jan Neal?
Good evening, Jan Neal, Boulders Carefree resident. I wasn't planning on speaking, but I would like to address what Councilmember Amoroso just said. I think it's one thing if it's possible for someone to have residential over retail, and it is an absolutely other thing to put it in our general plan, which could be perceived as encouraging it. So I would support the changes that Matt has proposed for that very reason. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so that closes the public comment section on this item. So we'll bring it back to council. So Matt, I like the changes that you've made, and if council has any comments about it, please share them. So hearing none, I think we're good.
You have our direction.
Okay, thank you. Next.
Okay, so getting into the topic du jour today, special planning area designation, the northwest corner of Tom Darlington and Carefree Highway. So again, most common issues and concerns that we heard through the 60-day review process. And for those that are not familiar, the map there, and obviously the red area circled is the subject property. And what we heard from residents, again summarizing all of the comments, is concerns about increased traffic that worsens already poor flow and safety conditions, negative impacts on views, increased noise, environmental impacts and wash disturbance, and no resident oversight, change zoning back. So like I mentioned in the previous conversation, what I would mention here is it's great, again, that residents share their input because it, from a consultant standpoint, it helps us understand where everyone's mindset is. And so personally, when I was reviewing this information and landed on that no resident oversight, and I heard a lot change zoning back, that kind of tells me, wait a minute, we're talking about the general plan, so there might be benefit in having further conversation if people are thinking that this is changing zoning, because we're not changing zoning, we're just changing the general plan. So that was part of the process that I wanted to have further conversation on this topic in order to make sure we're all on the same page. So when we talk about general plan and zoning, I wanted to show this slide to convey the nuances, that the general plan is that policy document, right, the 30,000 foot level, that just, you can see, it's kind of an eye chart, but the land use categories on the map on the left, which is the general plan map, just describes broad land use types that may be appropriate for a specific area. And so you can see that this subject property is colored in gray there for that special planning area. Now, if you move to the right, that's the town's zoning map. And the zoning map, as I mentioned before, provides entitlement, right? Now we're getting closer to the ground, if you will, and the zoning map starts to define what are the specific land use types that can be developed on a property, what are the development standards, setbacks, height, things to that nature. And so you can see that the zoning map, while the general plan identifies this as a special planning area, the zoning map still shows it as rural 70, which means residential, or a minimum of 70,000 square foot lots. And so that is one thing that I wanted to emphasize for the benefit of the conversation this evening, is making sure we all understand the difference between a general plan and zoning. So the general plan is used to help plan the community, city, town, and the zoning is what is then used to really guide development and entitle people to the development of their property. So to dial down a little deeper, didn't have this slide at Planning Commission, but thought it might be beneficial for conversation purposes if needed. But pulling up an aerial of the site, I know everyone knows the town, so you don't necessarily need to be told where this is. But just to understand context, the map on the left shows the subject area, right? The area in green, and then the relationship to some of the development surrounding it. And then just to zoom in so everyone understands the wash that was discussed in concerns, or the number of parcels that make up this total area, this slide just kind of gives you context. So the thing that we wanted to ensure at the Planning and Zoning Commission is, again, to get everybody on the same page. So my thought was, okay, there's really 3 avenues here that I want to clarify for everyone, and this is what we walked residents through. We said first, we talked about general plan and zoning. So with that tutorial in mind, here's what can be done on this specific site. Today, someone can come in and put an application in and develop the property under the existing residential zoning. So right now, the property still preserves its single-family residential zoning, and if someone were to come in, even if this general plan were to be ratified, because the zoning is in place, they can still do residential. Now, that I wanted to make clear. Residential is still an ability to develop today. The alternative is we keep the special planning area. And the special planning area, the benefit of that, it narrowly and can collectively define in the general plan what we're willing to accept for this property in terms of if we're not willing to accept all development types, defining it as a special planning area does give us the opportunity to be more specific, as I always say, create the bumpers to control what we want there. Then it gives us even more ability to seek and address or mitigate issues and concerns. So like we talked about, concerns about wash or concerns about views, we can start to build qualifiers in the general plan to help address those. And then ultimately, in my view, in my opinion, general plans can act like a receipt to decision makers for the public, in that if a general plan is ratified by voters, that's their receipt to talk to their decision makers when projects are coming up to say, this is what the community supported, and this is what we work towards to craft. My concern is if we revert the special planning area, it would, in essence, take it back to the land use category of very low-density residential, which would align with the zoning that's in place. It would remove all the mitigating policies currently incorporated into the general plan. So the special planning area, just as it's titled, allows us to treat individual properties uniquely because they're special. And we all recognize that they have unique qualities that might influence what land use moves forward and how it moves forward. So it's common to identify, communities might use different terms than a special planning area, but it's common to have that approach. If we take that designation off, then that would remove that. And then because very low density residential is applied universally across the town, then we would be limited to the guidance of that very low density residential designation. And so we lose some of the controlling policies that were crafted in the current draft of the general plan. And then we just acknowledge that future major general plan amendments may be considered at any time in the calendar year moving forward. So in the past, you could only take major general plan amendments to council once during the calendar year. And so it was prudent for communities to look in advance about what properties might need different types of considerations and look at or take into account that major amendment could only happen once per calendar year. Now it can happen any time because state law was changed. The legislature changed it and said now you can assess major general plan amendments at any time. And so we would have to just prepare ourselves that if we revert it, that we still may see proposals coming forward for different projects that we may not have anticipated compared to what some of the conversations have been focused on up to this point. So, with all that tutorial in mind, not trying to read all of this language here, but what I'm trying to emphasize with this slide is in the current draft of the general plan, we had two thoughts when we considered this special planning area. One is we recognize the current general plan didn't explain the special planning area, the tool itself, and what it does and what it is. So if you look in the column on the right, we added a whole section that tried to better identify and introduce just the topic of special planning area. So we clarified what the tool is, and then we also even added detailed planning for such areas shall be completed in tandem with a zoning or development request for the subject area. The enhanced planning process, and you can see our edits. We heard from residents, we don't like wishy-washy language, so we revised typically to shall at minimum consider, and we clarified to try and show residents that in that special planning area, we were trying to build in that oversight that they were looking for. Now, that we felt like didn't necessarily get us all the way there. We still needed some language that guided the development of the site itself. And this language was originally drafted as part of the prior major general plan amendment. So I will commend staff for their work on being diligent of considering, things are numbered here, so it's 1 through 9 areas of consideration that were being applied to this special planning area to, again, try and create those bumpers, as I say, of, okay, if we're going to say that possibly a low-profile casita-style resort is acceptable here, or residential. That's really what the general plan is saying right now, that if it can't be a low-profile casita-style resort that meets all these other requirements that are listed here. So we have limitations to try to address traffic and views, wash protection, noise and environment, and you can even see we tried to stitch in some further clarifications based on resident input to see if it helped improve or move the needle. So this was the guidance. Again, it's not just a special planning area and it's a free-for-all. It's a special planning area with very strict limitations on what could happen there within the context of the general plan. In addition to that language relative to just the special planning area, we also had goals and policies and actions in the general plan. And so we originally had a goal SC10 that addressed both of our special planning areas, the northeast corner on Cave Creek and Carefree, as well as the northwest corner. And residents came back and said, no, those are two different SPA areas. They should be two different goals and two different sets of policies. And we said, you know what, that's a completely fair observation. And so in the updated track changes version, we broke out the goals and then made a specific goal for the northwest corner. And you can see on this goal, we tried to also build in some more oversight. So there's enhanced notification of residents, as you can see from some of those policy statements associated with the goal itself. We also looked at the action items, which is that SCAC action item at the end there, to continue to try and make sure everyone understands that there's more checks and balances after the general plan to try and give opportunity for residents and the town to get the final development on this particular site that hopefully addresses concern over the site and some of the mitigating factors. So again, all of that background is shared to get everybody on the same page and to work with the same information and to feel that we all are, experts on this topic. And so when we had this conversation at Planning Commission, those that opposed the Northwest Corner SPA designation generally stated they understand the land use and zoning process and the various steps associated with the proposed option. So first, we get that off the table, right? That residents are sharing, Matt, I get it. We understand the difference between general plan and zoning. That's not the issue. Okay, let's move on then. Residents don't dispute that the major general plan amendment process that initially created this SPA was done properly. There's, I don't think, any debate that the town went through the proper steps in terms of identifying the current SPA designation. But residents expressed at the Planning Commission they believed that surrounding residents could have been better notified or informed and heard during that approval process. In response to that, the Planning and Zoning Commission did request a report for the record on the public engagement effort that was conducted. And so we had this conversation at our first work session, and then staff gave a report about the number of meetings and the participants at those meetings. Residents don't believe that the proposed text or track changes to limit the type of development within the SPA is sufficient. They desire any future project to go through the entire GPA zoning and site plan process rather than just the zoning and site plan process. So to explain that to everybody, we have certain layers of development that every project has to go through in the town. And so you start at checking the general plan, and if you align with the general plan, then you can go to zoning, and if you align with zoning, then you submit a site plan, if it's non-residential, a plat if it's residential, and then from there, you actually get building permits and can start to go vertical. So if the general plan were to stay as a special planning area, then you would still have the zoning process and the site plan process to respond to applications. What residents are saying in the Planning Commission conversation is that they would actually like to roll that back all the way to also having an applicant have to go through the general plan amendment process as well. Residents confirm that they understand and support the need for the town to plan for its economic future, but feel there are other locations and efforts, i.e. the northeast corner spa, that the town should prioritize. Commission requested legal interpretation regarding changing the northwest corner spa designation, and would that present a Prop 207 claim? And again, council can correct me if I'm wrong. This one's a little different in that there is no legal precedent right now where a general plan, that a claim has been brought to a community in regards to a general plan designation. In terms of some of the case law that is out there, legal looked into it and said there's some reasonable case law out there that if a claim were to be brought to the city, that, or the town, I should say, that the town would have some ground to stand on in terms of it not rising to a Prop 207 claim. But I think legal was important to clarify that there's no precedent. So while there's some legal cases out there, that doesn't mean that something won't, a claim couldn't be submitted and the town would have to address that. I'll maybe pause to see if.
Oh, Matt, I think you said it perfect.
Okay. It was also clarified that if the proposed general plan is voted down, that the current northwest corner SPA designation would remain in place in the current general plan. So that's just for conversation purposes. It was an observation that if through discussion it was preferred to keep the SPA designation, and where some residents share that that is a concern of theirs, Commission wanted to clarify that if the general plan was voted down, the current general plan stays in place, and the current general plan does have it designated as a special planning area. All of that, again, is to inform us. And so here it is, maybe the understatement of the day, this is a polarizing topic. This, while the planning and economic development application of the SPA tool on the northwest corner is appropriate and justifiable. So I will say, as a planner, as a consultant, and that's my job, is to consult, and then we have discussion, and the community decides what's best for them. But as a planner, as I mentioned before, this is an appropriate tool to use, and so I didn't have issue with it. And it's interesting, we received one email from a resident that started, I'm generally paraphrasing, but the resident said, this is a special area and we can't consider a resort on this site. And it jumped out at me because it started off with, this is a special area. And we're all recognizing that it has some unique qualities within the community, not just its location, but its potential development. And so these are hard conversations to have, and typically when we do see this level of uncertainty, that we would apply an SPA type of tool to it to, in essence, say that further conversation needs to be had when a formal application comes forward. But the SPA does at least identify that this property does have some unique considerations, more so than just flat residential designation, for example. I just share that in terms of justifying from a planning perspective, it's a reasonable approach. However, conversely, it has been expressed that reverting the northwest corner back to very low density residential would conflict with those residents who may not have commented previously because they had no opposition to the designation. So I think that is where that petition probably came into play, is the observation, and it's again a fair one, that when we present general plans to the community and we don't get comments back, often it's silence, right, is to say that you're in favor of something, and it's frequent that we get most comments when we're concerned about something. So the observation is at least made that if we didn't receive comment, it might be because residents didn't have issue with the current designation. And finally, which I'm sure will come up in conversation, it is recognized that if removed, the town does, and it's brought up in prior conversations, that the consideration for future revenue and the land use policy will need to be rectified based on resident preferences for, you know, having a limited government funding model. So trying to keep taxes low and looking for other revenue generating resources. We just want to be mindful of the whole package, right? And so if we're all looking at wanting to maybe slow down the process, then we also need to take stock of how does that impact other aspects of the community. And I know that's not lost on anybody, but at least making the point. And so consequently, unlike prior topics, we're presenting this to council for further conversation within this forum and seeking input. But we wanted to hopefully educate everyone, get us all on the same playing field, and have a thoughtful conversation. And so with that, Mayor, I'll turn it back over to council for any questions.
Thank you, Matt. Nice job. So this will be an interesting discussion. So the first three items that we spoke about were, we were able to find, I think, middle ground and solutions that we all could feel reasonably comfortable with. But this, unfortunately, is a yes or a no. It comes down to, right? You can't have it both ways. And if we look back on, I guess this process has been going on for, what, 6 months or so? Something like that. And so if you look at that packet of information, all the comments that Matt collected, there was 353 what he calls unique submissions. And in the packet, he writes, the large majority of comments favored removal of the northwest corner SPA designation. And then through that 6 months, we've had a lot of people come up here, I mean, like meeting after meeting, expressing their interest to have it removed from the general plan. They were here since day one. In the last 48 hours, we received a petition of 91 folks signing it, asking for, amongst other things, removal of the SPA over the northwest corner. So as a council, you know, we have, we always endeavor to listen to our citizens. It's representative government, but we have to also use our brains, but at the same time, we have to listen. So we have to listen to our residents. And if you look back at what we've done in the last several years, that's what we did on the sewer plant, and that's what we did on the water. We had people coming to us demanding these things, and we executed them based on public input. I also acknowledge that if the northwest corner SPA were to be removed, and eventually it was developed 1 house per acre, or 1 house per 70,000 square feet, we will have lost a significant opportunity to have revenue coming into the town. There's no question about that. And if you look at Peter Burns's presentations that he made to P&Z and he subsequently made to town council, we have revenue limitations that we need to address through in the future. The further you go out in the future, the harder it is to tell when you need to adjust them. Peter showed that, but it's going to have to be addressed someday. Some people have said that if we remove the general plan from the SPA out of the general plan, we will eliminate the possibility of the town getting sales tax from the property. That's not true. The property owner or a developer can come in and make an application. So if it is removed, they come in, they make an application for a general plan amendment. If it passes, then they come in and make an application for a zoning change. And then the public has an opportunity to refer it if they wish and vote on it. And depending on what the outcome of the vote, it either moves forward or it stops. But the important thing is to say, removing a northwest corner out of the SPA does not preclude it from ever being productive. Of course, there is a chance that in that time period, houses will be built there, then it'll be lost forever. But if you look at that property, it's been there since day one, and it hasn't been developed. It's a commercial corner, right? I believe it's a commercial corner. You look around, there's commercial things going on all around it. If we look at, Matt spoke about the stipulations that were built into the general plan update. And I think they're really good. We bent over backwards to incorporate those things. So some folks will say, well, if you take the northwest corner out, the SPA out, those items will be lost. Well, they won't be in the general plan, but they'll still be up here. And I would argue that if a new application comes in for a general plan amendment on this corner, that'll be the starting point. The starting point will be, we remember all those neighborhoods around us, around this property, were to be notified. We remember that there was this casita, to use some language, low-profile casita-style resorts, and there's a lot of other language. That'll be the starting point, even if it's not in this document. The public will demand it, I would think, and I would certainly want it. So I think we have to understand the political realities, and we also have to understand economic realities. So the political realities are very clear. We talked about that at the beginning when I started speaking about the inputs that we have from the citizens. Economic realities, Peter showed them to us. So we have things to worry about. The northeast corner, Carefree Highway and Cave Creek Road, that's going to get underway hopefully this year in terms of putting a shovel in the dirt. And that'll also produce some more revenue that was not at the time reflected in Peter's plan. So having said all of that, I would suggest that we remove the northwest corner SPA from the general plan. And I'll open it up to comments from the council.
You want me to go?
No, I'll go. Listening and hearing all of the complaints or desires to remove it, I have to respect that. And knowing that developers can see the potential in this property, that, we just have to go through the process from the beginning. So I would follow your lead and remove it from the language. But I want it known for the record, as an architect, that property is so much better with a low development, casita-style architecture that has small scale buildings just appearing above the plant flora is so much better than what we'll get as a residential property because it's noisy. We'll have entry-level custom homes going in there. So look at Scottsdale Road. The majority of what's being built there has a motor home loaded at one end of the building, so it's high mass on the end. The roof line drops down, picks up at the center mass and drops down. that really goes against all formal massing for architecture. So in terms of a look, that's not the entry that I want Carefree to have. I think that Carefree needs something that is stellar and a spa that language we can do easily to define it, and it will happen. And I know that people will understand that that is the better use for that property. But I really have to respect and honor this group of people. And I agree with the mayor. I think we can get there in 10 years or 8 years with a special plan.
Okay,
Did I-
thank you. Vice Mayor?
Yeah, I just want to point out that I have no problem taking it out. But we only have two pieces of property that can generate revenue. And that's that northwest corner and the northeast corner. And so at some point, we have to figure out a way to use it so that we can generate revenue for the town, unless we want to put in a property tax. And that's, to me, what the crux of this discussion is.
Councilman Johnson?
Hello? Okay. I agree with Councilwoman Kroger. I do have some concerns overall. I remember when the northeast corner was designated as an SPA. And I remember how hard the residents worked with the council. And ultimately, that land was zoned the same way. And the first impression was, let's fight. Then the pragmatism set in and we looked on all the corners and said, hey, that's all commercial development. Also, the realization that the town needed the revenue. You've got some bean counters that live in that area, so they got it. So I look at that process and I'm just concerned that maybe maybe I won't be popular saying this, that we're favoring one end of the town versus the other, because there's a lot of people that would have liked to have seen that land stay open and developed in another way. So having said that, I am concerned about the revenue long-term. Everybody hates property taxes, and to be honest with you, I think 50% of the people that voted against the fire tax would have voted no on any tax. So, having said that, you guys lobbied well. Hats off.
Councilman Hatcher?
Yes, thank you. I'm with the mayor on this. I agree we can move the SPA from the general plan. But I think Councilman Clint makes a very interesting point that I never thought about, was that if it does get developed and it is housing, it's not going to be, necessarily really nice properties, which is what we would like to have in our town. Not that I project that to happen, but I mean, that's an interesting perspective. And you would know better than, most of us for sure. Hopefully that won't occur, but I'm fine with removing it. And whatever comes up, according to the plan here, we will go through the whole process A to Z, right? And that, going back to that, Stacy will have more input at the time from the community. Would that be correct, if we did that? Starting all over from,
If it's reverted and then an application should come in from a developer, yes, it would go through a
The whole
public
process.
process.
Yeah, is-
Correct. But it would be more developer-driven at that point, yes.
okay. Everybody get that? Okay,
Unless it does develop as single-family residential, then it'll just go through a platting process.
right, okay.
So
Thank you.
I do have one last question on the 270 issue.
Candace?
As I understand it, when we put the SPA in place,
Okay.
that improved the value of that property. Are we diminishing the value of that property?
I think, Councilmember, I'll take that. I think that's the question. I think Matt set it up perfectly, but that's the question. I mean, general plan, you know, is not legislation. Therefore, it's not like zoning, which is legislation and puts specific entitlements on, but it's not been a tested issue either. I think there's several cases historically that have shown that general plans aren't legislation, so I think would not be subject to the 207, and that would be the defense we would have to make. But I'd prefer to just kind of leave it at that for now, but I think it's, would be a defensible position, but there's no guarantees.
So we'll be making case law.
Potentially.
Yeah, okay.
I would argue it's not much different than having a proposed highway being built somewhere, and someone says, oh boy, a highway's coming, let's buy the land. Well, then the highway isn't funded. The highway takes a different route. It's called speculation.
Well, a general plan's different because it's voted on by the people, and so, I mean, it does show the policies like they're talking about. But, obviously, the landowner had to go through a major general plan amendment to get the SPA designation. So he is going backwards. But at the same time, 207 is supposed to go to specific land uses, and that's why we think it's not a decided issue, but we think there's clearly defenses. Don't know whether they would carry the day or not, but we feel pretty good about it.
Well, in this case, the town was the applicant. And I don't want to make this too basic, but that's what I think. The town was the applicant.
Mayor, Councilmember DeLisi.
Okay, when I'm done. So the town was the applicant, not the property owner, not a developer.
Right.
So they did not incur any lost costs here.
Another part of our argument.
Okay, Councilman DeLisio.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so all right. So that specific parcel had been identified, the northwest corner, over 40 years ago as being arguably the what had the potential for the highest revenue retail generation in our town. And there had been plans that were proposed through the years for that specific parcel. The idea is, and I'll say this up front, I'm not in favor of removing the SPA from the general plan amendment. The idea is that just as we rezoned the property on the northeast corner, the residents surrounding the area and the HOA had input into, offered input into what type of restrictions were put on that property so that it would involve bringing the right type of retail to that property. And that's something that we can do here. We do it the right way. It will provide revenue generation for the town to continue to avoid a property tax for the residents of the town. And that's the whole idea here. And we have, again, an opportunity to do it right, to continue moving forward. Our town is ever evolving, ever changing. The residents, the families, people moving in, people moving out, the growth. And while we are at near build out, we have an opportunity to continue to self-sustain through the right types of development on specific parcels that will continue to help us avoid a property tax. And even with our one of our P&Z commissioners providing a report on the potential deficits that are looming, now more than ever, it's important to continue to move forward.
Okay, thank you. Councilwoman Amoroso.
So I am against taking it out of the general plan as well. And many of you know why, and I've talked about that I think it's short-sighted to shut the door on an opportunity in the future because we don't know what the future will bring. And using a very moderate growth rate, which was positive in Peter Burns' analysis, showed that we will need more revenue by 2032. for services, our primary services, as well as our roads and culverts. And so, and businesses come and go, as we found with the CVS, and there are a lot of risks in our future that we don't know if they're gonna happen or not. So I feel that the process that we went through for the SPA was appropriate, and the parameters of what the neighborhood would agree with are pretty strong, and it's a high hurdle for any developer to come in. And I have spoken with residents on While Away who unsolicited have come to talk to me about the special planning area, saying that they approve of having a Hermosa Inn style resort in that property. And I would argue that they are probably the most impacted, as they're the closest to it, just across the wash. So I think some of the other issues that are people are concerned about can be overcome, like traffic, and I think the restructuring, if you will, of Carefree Highway will make it much more safer for left turns, which is one of the biggest issues that people talk about that they're concerned about. I think noise is something that can be worked with. I think that it's not going to impede any views up, but you know, it will be obviously different than if you had, you know, 10 houses there or something. So I do think that we should keep all of our options open since they're limited, and we are, you know, I've heard loud and clear, no one wants a property tax, and so our sales tax is going to have to carry the day. And we are at, you know, the same level, 9.3 cents as Cave Creek, and Phoenix and Scottsdale are 8.06 and 8.5. So we don't want to be the leader and think that we can raise our sales tax in order to be, to generate more revenue. We can't do that. I mean, in my opinion, it's too high already because we want to incentivize people to shop in Carefree, not disincentivize people to shop in Carefree. So I think that we've done our job in terms of the SPA, and the parameters, I think, are a very high hurdle. So to me, it doesn't make sense to like go back and start all over again when I think it's a very high hurdle already.
So, may I? Correct me if I'm wrong, removing it from the general plan doesn't preclude it from ever happening. We can always come back and do a general plan amendment, get planning and zoning, and have it developed. Am I correct on that?
Yes.
Yes, if we were to remove the SPA designation, at any time, any property owner can bring forward a request. So I would say that they could bring forward a resort, or they could bring forward something else. But
Okay.
it would all have to be considered on a case-by-case basis.
And we're not shutting the door. They can always come back. In fact, what you highlighted is they can come back anytime. They're not subjected to a legislative calendar as it has been in the past.
There was also, Mayor, I did not address the prior comment about residential above retail that was asked. This SPA designation and the zoning that would more than likely be associated with it does not have a provision like the town center does about residential above retail. So it's in essence a non-issue of that specific nature. The other point I would just clarify for the record is that the petitions we received were in favor of keeping the SPA area, not removing it.
Correct. Oh,
Okay.
yeah. Very clear.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, this is actually for Steve. How long would it take if somebody started the SPA process again? Because you've gone through it with the property owner. I'm just curious.
Mayor, Mayor, Councilmember Johnson, I mean, obviously, it takes a long time, so, you know, the whole process for us took somewhere right around 14 months to, you know, kind of really starting it from start to finish when we went through it. But I would say it's, at minimum, you know, if somebody really wants to go do it right, you're going to take about a year to make sure that you have the proper engagement, go through it. My personal feeling is, if you already have what you want, why would you go back and do it again? I mean, it just makes absolutely zero sense to me, but, and put those poor people all the way through that again would be kind of cruel, but, so that's just,
Please, no,
no, you know, look, I dealt with these people at a personal level. I worked really closely with those folks on While Away, and they're good with this. They understand it. This is what these are their terms. You bring another developer in, you're going with the developer's terms. This is why you do it this way. So I just respectfully, I've been through this before, and I'm gonna tell you as a professional, you probably have limited the opportunity for any developer to want to come in, because there's no reason. You've told them you don't want commercial, you took it out. So if you're trying to market it moving forward, it's like taking something off the shelf that you want to sell, and you're trying to sell it. So it's a really weird concept, but
Thank
I'm
you.
just giving my 2 cents.
So you're saying that for anyone to develop this, whatever it may be, the time that it would take to develop it, will it be homes, or Stacy said the plat, or commercial property? We've now extended the time, the process, and the cost to develop this piece of properity?
You'd be
period?
extending it to go back through the general plan process. You can probably run them at some level concurrently. But what you're losing, you can say you want those things, but this is my experience. When you have a developer in tow, first of all, it could be anything. This is what the neighborhood wanted. They wanted this type of use as far as commercial. We considered all different types of commercial development, including neighborhood retail, which they rejected because of the traffic issues. And so this was something that was done in negotiation with the neighborhood, and to remove it is to take away that negotiation, that contract that we had with them. I'm just telling you now, and if you get something great coming in, and it's not what they want, you're putting them in an awkward situation.
okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So please know that when a developer comes to us, we don't just roll over and do what they want. If we don't approve what he wants, then we tell him, no, thank you, or we tell him what needs to be modified. So Hatcher, Councilman Hatcher, you had something?
No, that was the question I had was Steve, are we expanding the potential time and cost for the next individual to develop that piece of property? That's what I wanted to know. Yeah. Are we-
Well, the last time we did it was during COVID, so we can probably do it quicker this time.
Yeah. And just one other general comment that Mike brought up is that there'll be a time, and you're saying to us today, that we accept the potential of a property tax to run the town, whether it be 10 years from now or 15 years from now, but that is what you are telling us. Everybody understand that? And everybody's got to be good with it, because we want to maintain the quality of services for all of you.
Okay. Hey,
I'm just
okay,
saying,
we don't-
that may never happen, but
We have to,
you have to recognize that.
yeah, so we just need to have dialogue that's controlled when you come up. So
Yeah.
please,
I'm just
So,
saying.
rhetorical
I'm fine with
questions
it,
also.
you know, I'm fine with it, I'm just saying, there'll be a time that we
Okay, very good.
reduce things, we're gonna have to come up with different
we
avenues.
have to run,
that's all.
at the end of the day, we have to have money to run the place.
Yeah, that's all I'm saying.
Okay, so now we'll go to public comment, and we have a number of slips. Ms. Nakisa Azizi. Please come up, thank you.
Hello. My name's Nahisa Azizi. I'm a resident here in Carefree. I moved here about a year ago with my husband. I'm from Chandler originally, and I'm also running for town council. And I just wanted to express my support for removing the spa from the northwest corner. I think it's the right thing to do. I think it reflects what the residents say that they want. And I also think that any notion that it's either develop the land or impose a property tax is a false dichotomy. I don't think those are the only two options. I mean, we can look at how we're spending the money that we do have, and we can also look at, you know, utilizing the land that's already been developed, revitalizing it, revamping it, doing whatever we need to optimize its potential to generate revenue. I don't think it's very, I guess, forward-thinking to assume that anytime there's this, you know, need for more revenue, that we can just go and develop some more land. I mean, we live on a finite planet with finite resources. You can't have infinite growth on a finite planet with finite resources. So anyhow, I just wanted to share my thoughts. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Stephanie Barber.
Do you mind if I put this back in?
Whatever makes you feel comfortable.
Thank you. Stephanie Barber, Carefree resident. There's just a couple of data points I think I'd like to especially share with you, Mr. Fitzgibbons. There was a lawsuit, and there were disclosures during that lawsuit. One of those disclosures is from the landowner to the town that says the SPA he did as a favor for the town, that he was not pursuing it himself, it was a favor to the town. So that helps with 207, I would think. The second thing is, at the time we were doing the SPA, there was...
Are we talking about what's the
The SPA, the landowner that owns that, yes. There is an email document that, from the landowner, John Lassen, to the town that says he is doing the SPA as a favor to the town. That is not something he's pursuing as a favor. The second data point is, at the time that they did the SPA, there was a developer that was involved. It was Timothy Mettenbrink. And there was documents between Timothy Mettenbrink, the landowner John Lassen, and the town where the developer and the landowner said that they project that a resort will earn $500,000 a year for the town. The northeast corner, $1.2 million a year. When Thompson Thrift was looking at the northeast corner, they projected $1.3 million a year. So the bottom line is, we've all said we have limited staff. So let's put our limited staff towards where we have the most value. $500,000, $1.2 million. Let's take our staff and let's focus them on where we are going to get the most revenue. The other thing I'd like to say is, to Mr. Johnson's point, Councilmember Johnson's point, the community right now, you're hearing from the community because the community doesn't feel like they had a chance to have a say. The two public hearings were done in the summer. They were done during COVID lockdown. I don't think anybody here is saying that they are adverse to a high-quality development. What they're saying is, we want to be involved. We want the SPA taken out of the plan. We want to start the process over again when we have a developer that has details so that we can understand what is really going to potentially be going in that corner so that we can be involved. Because bottom line is, a well-executed general plan reflects the residents of the community. And all we're saying is, we want to be involved. And, you know, you're also doing a disservice to a developer, a future developer right now, because the bottom line is, a general plan land designation, it says to a developer, the community supports this. Well, you're not hearing community support for this right now. So you're doing a disservice to a future developer as well. So the bottom line is, let's focus our limited resources where we're going to get the biggest bang for the buck, the northeast corner. It's not $500,000, the northwest corner. And let's make sure you get community support once and for all. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Colleen Rose Skirty.
Hi, Colleen Rose Skirty, Carefree resident. I'm kind of a little bit in the middle on this because I would need some clarification on a couple of things. Clint, I agree with you that it is a commercial spot, and somebody looking at that, its highest and best use probably is something like a Hermosa style kind of thing. I I don't think somebody would want to build their beautiful house on that corner where it's zoned for so I get that. Now, what protections do we have if it's zoned for one house for 70,000, square feet, and they're talking about, okay, cheap homes would go in, which I would not want. I see them going up, no offense. You're saying how you have the right to make the right decision, and you would not turn down you would turn down a bad project, which I appreciate. But the Hampton Inn was a bad project. The View condos were a bad project, and you did approve those. But how could somebody come in and then put in a tract of cheap houses if it's only one for 70,000? Are you saying they would do 7 of those on the lots of the cheap houses? I'm just trying to figure out, I don't want something worse, right? I understand Stephanie's point, and I totally agree. Another developer could come back, it could go through the right channels. I just want to be that we don't end up with something even worse without us having a say. So I don't know if that makes sense, because it's...
Yeah, I can clarify it. So it's zoned R70. So someone can come in and build R70 houses that meet our specifications in the town code, and we cannot stop them. So when I said if a developer comes in and we can control them or have a say, that's a developer who comes in who wants to build something than R70 houses. So commercial development, something else. But if someone comes in and says, this is the town code, I can dot all the i's and cross all the t's, then he can build what he wishes. That's a fact.
Kind of like how the Hampton Inn. Yes.
No, that was
It
approved.
should. Anyways,
But
we'll
you
go.
have a very good point, and Councilman Miller has a good point also. You're aligned in that if someone comes in and wants to build houses that are to the existing town code, to the existing zoning, all we can do is make sure they follow the law. We cannot stop them. That's a fact.
And Mayor Crane, if I may add, and I think this might add clarification to what I think Ms. Skirty is trying to get at, is that with residential development, and I think this is at the heart of it, is that people want to see quality, they want to see good design, they want to see nice architecture. As a special area, the way it's defined, hand in that right now. For residential development under state statute, we cannot regulate design. I have been seeing in development and Carefree and a lot of the lots that we have, or a lot of our infill lots, people are utilizing production home builders to build on the single family lots that we have in various neighborhoods. Some HOAs have the opportunity to have a heavier hand in design based on what their CC&Rs say. Many of them don't, and many of our neighborhoods, in particular this one, does not have an HOA. So the control that the town has now, and I just to sort of, I think, to speak a bit to Steve's point, is that right now, in my opinion, I went through the process. I understand that there's a difference of perspective. But we built in those quality measures and we did that with, I believe, community input, in particular, the residents that are most impacted came to an agreement. And that's where you see a lot of how land use typically tends to happen. Is it's hard to do land use when you're doing a general plan, a general plan update. That's why typically we like to see land uses happen at an amendment level, because it inclusively affects and it reaches out to those that are most immediately impacted, but then it also becomes a community-wide understanding. But to get back to the point that I'm trying to make is that, so as Steve was saying, is that when the developer comes in, you're right, I think we have a chance to let them know what we want to see and the quality that we expect. I guess it will become an issue of what that proposal may be and what the town believes that its benefit most. And you might be in a situation where you're compromising some of that quality. I'm not saying that you will, for the benefit of getting that special use that affects, the finances of the town in a positive way.
But then, would the residents have a say, or would they not be able to have a say if something like that were to occur?
If it's residential development?
Yes.
No.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
thank you.
Next up, Mr. Anton Wilkie.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor, council members. I'm Anton Wilkie, 15-year resident in Smoke Tree Drive. I was one of those who supported the SPA. I didn't feel necessary to make a lot of noise about it because it's already in there. Basically for the reasons that Councilman Amoroso detailed. Also because in planning it, there's still a lot of hurdles to making it Hermosa style Inn. It has to be rezoned. My understanding from a recent planning and zoning meeting is that an effort to rezone it for that purpose could be subject to resident vote if someone petitions for one. So if our belief is that residents just don't want it, well, if they don't want it, it won't be there. They'll have an opportunity to vote it down. It did go through a process that included the residents. That has restrictions on the property that we would be giving up by, they might be reimposed through another general plan process, but it would have to be redone with inputs from the same people that did the first time. It's just, it's not a rights usage. It's an anticipated usage that already has done a lot of the work of determining what residents would accept. And for that reason, I encourage you to rethink and to keep it as it is. It's not so much, and it's not really a trade-off between 1.2 million on one corner and 500,000 on another corner. We don't know, the town staff, by devoting more effort, can't make the 1.2 million happen. We don't know which opportunity is going to come. We don't know that Lowe's is going to stay open and we're not going to need both. We don't know that Bosch's is going to stay there and we're not going to need both. We just don't know. What we do know is that the town has said pretty clearly that they don't want to get to a property tax. If Lowe's and Bosch's close, which is certainly possible, unless we got replacements for them, we might find that not having this as an available option is a real problem for us. Not that we can force it to happen, because we can't. A developer would still have to come forward, zoning would still have to get proposed, approved, and voted on. But it's, if we're planning for the town's future, we need to really keep options open for the future. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Diana Davidson.
My name's Diana Davidson. I'm a Black Mountain Foothills resident. I stood before you a couple weeks ago and outlined the lack of transparency and inclusion regarding the spa on Black Mountain. There's not more I can say that has not been said 1,000 times prior to this evening. We are not in agreement with our mountain being part of the SPA. We wish to have it returned to the original plan, and should another proposal be introduced, then we will assess at that time. I am not sure how it has got this far with so much opposition. My community is not going to change their minds regarding the spa. I have been told that the residents of Grandview are not in agreement, but will not speak out for private reasons, and it seems obvious that the homeowners surrounding this area are not going to agree either. If the people who are closest disagree, then exactly who is pushing this along and to whose benefit? We, the residents, don't feel it's appropriate or justified.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Jan Neal.
Jan Neal, Carefree resident. Let's please get back to the matter at hand, which is removing the spa from the general plan. A staggering number, 350 plus responses were received for the general plan survey. The overwhelming majority of residents want the SPA for the northwest corner of Tom Darlington and Carefree Highway removed from the general plan. The residents have spoken. Mayor, thank you for your comments. Councilmember Miller, thank you for your comments. Councilmember Hatcher, thank you for your comments and your support. It's refreshing to hear support of the residents. It's long overdue. I realize some council members have concerns about our long-range fiscal stability. Some seem to be using this argument to characterize residents' input as naive and not worthy of consideration. But Carefree residents, we're a little bit more intelligent than that. Taking the SPA on the northwest corner out of the general plan doesn't eliminate future development opportunities. In fact, it allows us to keep all of our options open, which is great. A developer can come forward at any time with a proposal, including a resort. But the next time Carefree initiates a major amendment for this corner, the community must be given ample opportunity to be involved. A major amendment is just that, major. It significantly changes the future character of our wonderful small town and deserves the same care in soliciting public opinion as the general plan. During COVID, in the summer, in the dark of the night, so to speak, this SPA was done. Even though we are told that the process was followed, resident perception is that we were not aware and involved. As you know, perception is reality. As the survey responses to the general plan survey indicate, Carefree residents want a voice as to the development of that corner. It's a strategic entryway into Carefree. We don't want another situation where we have something like a water tank next to our Town of Carefree sign.
Ms. Neal, time is up. Well, thank you. Okay. Mr. Les Peterson is our former mayor.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. I think most of you know me that are on the council, with the exception of Clint. I haven't had the opportunity to meet him. I was involved with the town for 11 years, 2 on planning and zoning, 9 on the council, 7 of those as mayor. I came off the council a year and a half ago. My biggest concerns, and Matt and our legal counsel have addressed a number of these so far, is I thought the language in the revised plan that was coming forward were overstepping, and that you ran a high probability of suits coming about. You have resolved these on the state land parcel by taking out rezoning, and on the rezoning the downtown area, those kinds of things. On the oversight committee for the water company, which went away as well. You've resolved it. On this one, the one that's up here now, frankly, I'm in between on it. I think that there are things that could be worse that could happen if you took it out of the SBA. That gives you some limitations on it that you can turn the screws. You can get a worse alternative, or you can get no alternative, which will go on forever. And from experience, I know the town is facing financial problems. How sure are you on rural metro in a year and a half, 2 years, when they come back with are they even going to be here? How sure are you, and as Mr. Burns in his financial analysis, what are you going to do in 6, 8 years when you take the reserve fund from its current 13, 14 million down to 5? Are you going to have to cut services? Listening to what's been going on here and watching, I don't think you know enough to make this decision yet on this particular one. I think there's still enough unknowns that either way that you go, you may one day regret it. And somehow, I think you need to get further in. I'm 5149, keep the SBA, you have some controls, but I'll leave it up to you. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you. Ms. Diane Roth? Okay, well, that's where that slip went. Thank you. Ms. Janet Beavis?
Good evening, Janet Vivas, Carefree resident. Many of you have heard this before, but you're going to hear it again. A few weeks ago, a Carefree resident posted a letter in the Sonoran about courage required to speak up at town meeting. I agree, it takes courage to stand at this podium. Mark Twain said there are two types of speakers, those who get nervous and those who are liars. On the flip side, it takes courage and commitment to sit where you are, hold elected office, sit on committees and commissions, making the town's most important decisions. We are at a crucial juncture, and your decisions tonight will impact our town's future for 10 years. I hope you've absorbed the 350-plus residents' general plan comments on open space in the Northwest Corner Spa. Many of us here tonight invested hours in the general plan process, believing it was predominantly resident-driven, but were extremely disappointed when the revised general plan consisted entirely of town government language and goals, not of the residents, who were led to believe their voices would matter. I cannot stress enough that the major spa amendment lacked the transparency the town would have us believe and accept. Instead, it was pushed through on the novel Zoom platform at the height of the global pandemic lockdown, while even town representatives spoke through their masks. With few resident voices at council and P&Z, the major amendment sailed through. Just a reminder, at the abutters meeting, 34 out of 35 voted against a hotel. Ironically, the one favorable vote was a friend of the landowner. As you were all aware from residents' comments, there's a lack of support for a major hotel at the entrance to the town, given negative environmental consequences, excess water demands, increased traffic, air and light pollution. We moved to Carefree for its open space and gorgeous views, not for hotels. Retention of the spa in the general plan based on estimated revenue at a corner strewn with failed businesses is a gamble. A hotel could fail like the adjacent deserted El Pedregal, the abandoned grocery building at Terra Vita. Very low density residential homes, not a hotel, is what it's zoned for and should remain. We've seen what the town has allowed in the village center. For those of us who love Carefree, we can't stand by and let poor choices continue without expressing our dismay. I hope, councilors, you will also not stand by. I begin by talking about the courage to speak up, and I now ask you to have the courage to reject the flawed process that became the spa on the Northwest Corner, and thank you to those of you that are going to reject it. Thank you.
Thank you. So that closes our public comment. I have no additional slips. So as a council, this is a workshop, so we cannot vote on things. But what we do need to do is arrive at a consensus so we can give Matt direction. Okay? So I don't want to put words in anyone's mouth, but go ahead.
May I ask a question before we?
Sure.
Stacy, is there anything that we can do to augment this such that if someone were to come and look at this piece of property and want to develop homes, that we can raise the bar with respect to, lack of a better term, quality, design, et cetera, so we don't end up with something we're not happy with?
Right. Mayor, members of council, I don't believe so. State statute's pretty clear in terms of imposing upon a property owner's right to develop and infringe upon creating costs that are difficult for them to develop. So unless, again, there's an HOA and they have guidelines in place, I mean, even if you have a new developer come in, he may not want to create design guidelines, but it's more when you go through the platting process, it's ensuring that you're meeting infrastructure requirements, zoning requirements, but when it comes down to architecture and design, you know, unless you have a developer or a home builder that is interested in having design considerations and homeowners associations and CCNRs and things to that effect, it would be by their choice. It wouldn't be that the town would be able to require it.
So if they met all the guidelines, that's it. We have no say so.
That's correct.
Right. We have zoning development standards, but we can impose design standards.
So based on what I heard at the planning and zoning meetings regarding this issue, is that people just want houses there. They do not want, well, I'm just saying, the people that got up and spoke, this is what I heard, and that, you know, we don't want to destroy the desert and have tract houses, but that's kind of like where we're going with this. Because it seems, from what I heard at that meeting, most people were against any type of resort whatsoever. Now, not everybody in here agrees with that, but I'm just saying from what I heard from what people were saying. And that is the impression I got. You can disagree with me. I love disagreements. I love to debate. But that is what I heard. So my impression is that letting the SPA go means that we are going to have houses there, and I think we should just accept that. That is what my impression is.
I would argue that's a commercial corner. Look at everything that's around it. And when the time is right, it will be developed commercially. When our community is ready to have it developed commercially. The delta in value between residential development to the landowner and to the landowner, the difference between commercial and residential is significant, and I would expect till he would wait. It's a crapshoot. Okay, there's a risk.
Mayor?
There's always a risk.
Oh, okay, Mr. Delicio.
So, okay. Doing nothing, as Councilmember Amoroso stated, essentially just authorizes someone to come in and construct R70 homes on that property. Okay. The whole process in vetting out the potential for rezoning, you know, that started a few years back in the height of the pandemic. We were all bound by the same resources in terms of how things were conveyed, communicated, whether it was done via Zoom. It is irrelevant because it was during the time that we were all operating that way. And there were public meetings, there were public forums, everything was delivered, input was sought throughout the whole process. And doing nothing relegates that property to being open to residential development. By keeping this parcel as part of the SPA, in keeping it within the general plan, it gives us a roadmap and will allow our residents to continue to have input as to what they want to see there. So we have to keep that in mind, that again, we are looking down the road. We are looking 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever it may be. Just as we went through the rezoning process on the northeast corner, the input of the residents surrounding that area were critical to having that parcel rezoned properly, just as we can do here, just as we can decide on what we want to go there. But doing nothing, again, relegates us to the potential for residential development, which won't benefit the community over time, aside from putting some houses there. We have an opportunity to do this right and to continue to stave off a property tax. We have to be forward thinkers. We have an economic development director that has offered his input on this and that has done this many, many times in the past and been very, very successful at it. And going through this process again, we're handcuffing ourselves in not having the right type of development on that property. We have to be forward thinkers here.
Okay, any other comments?
Mayor?
Yes,
Oh, I'm sorry.
Staff.
I apologize. I just wanted to mention two things, if I may, with regards to what Councilman Amorosa said and what you also said, Mayor. First of all, in terms of the type of housing product that could happen there, I mean, you may have a forward-thinking, quality residential developer who might build, you know, a nice product. But I'm just telling you based on the trends, so I'm not saying it won't happen, but this is based on what I'm seeing today, is that we are finding that the production home builders that we see in a lot of more dense communities are who are coming and building homes in Carefree. And in this case, based on its location, 2 arterials, one being expanded, seeing that its setting is within a commercial area, the fact that the other 3 corners are commercial, the likelihood of having a high-end quality residential development is more unlikely than likely. And that's sort of in reinforcing Councilmember Miller's point. The other thing I would like to just also say, in my opinion as the planning director, is that by removing the special planning area, I understand that you believe when we look at it that just based on those same parameters, it is a commercial corner. But I believe when you remove that, now that we went through a process, we can argue the transparency of the process. I don't think that's a reason to remove the land use. I think you have to consider really what the important factors are of why the land use is what it is. But I believe if you remove it, you are telling the development community you are not interested in commercial. So.
Okay, great. Any other comments?
Yes. Stacy, if we came together and we added an amendment down the road, what does that buy us? What flexibility can we expand on?
Mayor, Councilmember Hatcher, maybe you can explain to me a little bit more what you
My understanding is
mean.
we can't do anything, if we make any changes to the plan, it's through an amendment. Dennis?
Your question is,
If we want to make any changes to the general plan, we have to do it through an approved amendment. Is that correct or not?
well, there's minor amendments and major amendments to the general plan, but yeah, you'd have to come back to amend it later on.
And it depends on the proposal, correct? So if it's a residential proposal for 2-acre lots, then no, there's no amendment necessary. I'm assuming you've reverted the land use. But if you take that land use out and then a shopping center was interested in coming to the corner, they would have to come back and, yes, do an amendment to the general plan. Mhm. And I think that's sort of somewhat of the point that some of the council members have made in the audience is that, well, you know, take it off now, and when somebody comes back and they're interested in a certain type of development that's not 2-acre homes, you all will evaluate it then. It's just a question of what that might come back as.
Thank you.
I'd just like to make some clarification. When we talked about the northeast corner, we threw out a couple of numbers, 1.3 million and 1.2 million. One of those projects would have put somewhere between 125 and 150 high-density townhomes that would have backed up to all the surrounding communities. As you know, the state changed the law, so long-term rentals would have done nothing for us. There wouldn't have been any revenue, so that would have been a tragedy if that had gone forward. With respect to the other numbers, we're talking 500, 1.3, or 1.2. We really don't know what's going to be built out there. We have, as I understand it, one industry anchor. But again, I have to emphasize, it just makes me nervous. I think it's a mistake to take the SPA out. I have to agree.
All right, any other comments from the council? Okay, so, as I mentioned earlier, we cannot take a vote. It's not it's a workshop, not a meeting. But we can arrive hopefully at a consensus, a majority of council, which feels going in one direction or another, and we can give the Matt direction and how to move forward for his planning and zoning meetings and updates to this document. Councilman Miller, I think, why don't you tell us what you're thinking? I think my impression is.
Very reluctantly, I'm removing it because I'm honoring the community. But in terms of what I believe should be there, it should be in the plan.
Okay, so that's a removal. Councilwoman Amorosa? No, you say take it out?
He said take
Yeah, remove it.
Understood, thank you.
Keep it in.
Understood. Councilman Hatcher?
I'm going to support the removal of the SPA, but I have reservations of just concerns of potential future risks that we're introducing here. That's my only other concern. Let's just hope for the best.
Councilman Johnson?
I'm for leaving it. I think it's a mistake.
Vice Mayor?
I'm for taking it out as long as it doesn't preclude us from ever developing that in the future.
Councilman Delicio?
I haven't spoken.
I'm sorry?
I'd like a turn.
Yes, it's your turn.
Is it?
Yeah, he's calling for you, Councilmember.
Okay, so I am honoring what our founders wanted for that parcel, and that is for rezoning, for commercial use. So I will be voting to keep the SPA in the general plan, and I am voting for our future to keep moving forward as a town so that we can self-sustain.
Okay, well, thank you. Okay, so, no, we're not voting, but just a count, I believe we have 4 council, and myself in favor of taking it out. So I believe we have on the council of our 7, 4 have spoken in favor of removing it, and 3 have spoken in favor of leaving it in. So with that in mind, Matt, you have direction on to move forward. Okay. So that'll close this part of the discussion unless, Matt, you have something to add? Matt, do you have anything?
I have something, Mayor. I guess we both kind of have I'm going to kind of speak for both of us because we were both kind of discussing this. I appreciate that you sort of polled the council. I guess, and I know what I'm going to hear when I say this, as staff, I'm not sure I'm clear on how we're going to bring to the Planning and Zoning Commission the draft to go through the public hearing process. I understand that you as a council have shown us there's a majority of how one group feels over the other. If you're telling me this is the direction, I guess that's what I need to know, because second of all, we've also talked about other, is this something like a state land use where it's a hybrid land use that meets everybody's objectives, only because I'm hearing, from what I'm hearing from my planning years, many people in support of it but voting against it, because I'm trying to understand the impetus behind that, please. Understanding, I think you're saying you've heard feedback from both. I'm sorry, there's just a lot of
Okay, please
background noise.
keep the background noise.
I'm trying to just understand, just to get us, I want a general plan that's approved by the voters, okay? But I'm trying to understand what we're bringing back through the public hearing process.
Well, my understanding is we have some trepidation about taking it out, but we wish to take it out.
Four of you wish to take it out.
4 of us wish to take it out.
So that's okay, it's a direction?
They're not voting on it, they still have to vote on it at the June 4th meeting, so that's when the actual vote's gonna be on it.
Right.
So it's still could be even changed at that time.
Oh, got you.
Okay, So that'll close that portion of the workshop. We have a call to the public, and we have a few slips. Ariane Buser, you're welcome to come up.
Hi, Ariane Buser, Carefree resident. So I am in support of removing the spa. I hope that, there'll be additional regulations and the whole process will have to come forward to the community. I think that's actually really important if it does need to be rezoned. But I also wanted to bring your attention to a couple of things. So I'm a PC for LD3, which is this area. And last night I learned about 3 potential laws or resolutions, I guess, that might be making its way through the legislature. And these laws could potentially impact the way that property is zoned and what is allowed to build on it. So basically, someone could have a piece of property and they can build whatever they want on it in terms of like casitas and all these things and kind of cram everything together. Basically, it's exactly what California has done, and it may be coming to Arizona. So while I am definitely for removing the spa, I just want to bring that to people's attention. In case anyone's curious, they can look it up. SB 2721, SB 2297, and SB 2720. Now, these have not yet made their way through the legislative measures, but there's a possibility that they will, and I just wanted to bring everyone's attention to it because it could very well impact a lot of the way that things are zoned currently, and not in a good way, because we do not want to be California, let me just tell you. But that's all I wanted to say, so thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. You have to, please sit down. You have to sit down. You have a form here, so I'll call you up. Ms. Janet Vivas? Please, you have to come up to the microphone.
I believe that only applies to towns with population or cities with populations above 70,000, so it would not
They
impact.
changed it. They changed it.
Please, we have to have,
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Just one at a time. You go. Let's not do
go ahead.
shout-outs.
Ms.
I heard somebody say they.
Yeah, I know, they were distracting you, Ms. Vivas.
To
You can
what?
finish
I
your
don't know.
comments and,
I have not heard that yet, but that's the latest I knew was the population had to be 70,000.
yeah, that may be changed. I've read that myself, so we'll see what happens. Thank you. I got this right. Okay, Ms. Jan Neal, did you wish to speak a call to the public?
Thank you. So we're hearing, and rightfully so, concerns about fiscal responsibility and so forth. And I'd like to know how many town council members have personally sat across the table from Empire or have become actively involved in getting some interest in that northeast corner. So Congressman Delicio, Congressmember.
Not yet. Someday.
Oh, what did I say? I thought I said council member, sorry. I have to read this because it's kind of a tricky thing. And Council Member Amoroso. I did hear at a prior meeting that I thought staff was directed to really pursue that northeast corner. So I would just encourage that to occur. And I also would like to thank Congress, there we go again, it's too long. Council Member Croyer, thank you for supporting us. We really appreciate it.
Okay, Mr. Art Vivas, you wish to speak?
I didn't know I was speaking to the federal government tonight, but please listen. There was something I'm going to quote. Cheap homes could be built there, or production-based homes. And Stacy said there could be in some communities that are dense, these kinds of things could happen. I don't see Carefree as being that kind of community where dense, cheap housing will be built. In fact, at the first P&Z meeting, I think it was 4 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, there was a proposal for a new home. It was a beautiful home that was being built, if anyone remembers that. I don't think it's zoned under VLDR for an HOA, as was kind of alluded to tonight. And I can't imagine anyone building a two-story home along the edge of Tom Darlington to look down upon Bike Week or anything else along that road. And Matt, we live, as I've told you before, adjacent to the first responder entrance on Langwood, at the very top corner of that diagram. We weren't involved in Steve's secretive third post meeting. We went to the first two. We weren't invited to the third. It was a post meeting he discussed. So that decision was made without our involvement. And there are only 4 homes other than the owner's daughter living in the corner on the other side.
Is that the clock? Mr. Vivas, your time's up. Thank you, sir. Mr. Anton Wilkie?
It's hard to put a slip in at the beginning, having no idea what's going to happen by the end, but. Okay, maybe I just get closer to the microphone?
That's good.
Okay, so I appreciate the difficult situation that council's been in. There were a lot of requests for changes that I thought were problematic. Generally, you kind of split the baby on most of them. I'd like to remind the council that a general plan is a general plan by statute. It's community goals and development policies, not specific development zoning issues or land use issues. Well, it is land use issues, but not specific parcels. That's not really what it's for. And there's been a lot of blurring of the difference between what the council and the planning and zoning deals with and what general planning deals with. I haven't been very happy with that part of the process because most of the comments are, some of them are confusing zoning and planning. Some of them are wanting the general plan to act as a limiting factor when when it's either the council responsibility or the planning and zoning committee. I do appreciate the effort you took to get through this. On balance, I believe the prior plan was better than this one. I'll probably vote no because the prior plan didn't have any of the splitting the baby provisions that you put in, and it didn't have an SPA either, but that was part of the amendment process. But I appreciate you. I thank you for all your work.
Okay, thank you. We have one more call to the public.
And Councilmember Delicio would like to respond to criticism.
No problem, we will.
Thank you.
Ms. Diane Roth?
Diane Roth, resident, be very quick. Everyone's tired. I just have one question. You're all assuring us on control about what's going to be built. The SBA defines everything. It'll keep it. How do we end up with the Hampton Inn and the View? The Hampton Inn's over height. So someone passed that. So you have residents that are a little skeptical on what's going on because of what we're looking at. So we appreciate the fact you're listening to us and taking the SPA out and admitting that down the road we will have more input. But you have to understand from our view, our skepticism is kind of earned. So that's all I'm saying. Also the water tank, the before and after pictures, we never know it was there, it was buried. We know it's there, it's big and in our face.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so that, I believe, closes call to the public. Councilman Delicio would like to reply to a comment.
So there's a sense, an insinuation that is felt that there's some criticism of the fact that council is not engaged with Empire and what's going on the northeast corner. And I have met with Empire as recently as 2 weeks ago to discuss design ideas and potential retailers for that site. They are working along with our economic development director to draw retail to that corner. So we are very much engaged on that and realize that it's a very unique project because the considerations with the neighborhood behind that property. So it's got to draw the right type of development so that it blends with our quote-unquote carefree lifestyle. And so it's ongoing. It is something that we are very engaged in and that we continue to work with our economic development director. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so that closes the public comment portion of the meeting. And before I wrap it up, thank you all very much for coming out and expressing yourselves. And it was a very good discussion, both on both sides of the seating here. So, okay, so let's see here. What do we got? Oh, next steps. So we have a Planning and Zoning Commission public hearing at 5:15 on Monday, May 13th. So what'll happen there is Matt will come back and we'll have incorporated the comments, the direction from the council from the last two meetings. And then on June 4th at 5:30 p.m., the town council will have a public hearing to review the draft and then approve it or not approve it and send it to the voters. Okay, so thank you all very much, and that concludes the meeting. Do we have to do an adjournment?
I move we adjourn.
Okay,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Thanks, John.